the first panel is really going to look at this question of what is techonomy and does it make sense as a concept, and how do we make it more understood if it does make sense. So yeah, Kevin, this is good. Right in the right order. You guys are excellent. Thank you.
We do as we're brigade. You know, we do what we're told.
So here we have Kevin Kelly, who's one of the founding editors of Wired and has written a book called What Technology Wants, which, if you didn't notice, we have copies of out in front, even though it's not published for a month or so, 2 months. We got special advanced galleys for everyone here, so that's a real treat because we feel that his book is probably the best explanation of what we believe of anything we've run across. Debbie Hopkins, what's your exact title here? It's Chairman of Venture Capital Initiatives and Chief Innovation Officer of Citi, but really a representative of, in effect, old industry thinking smart. Eric Schmidt doesn't need much introduction, example of new industry thinking smart. And finally, Lisa Randall, who is a theoretical physicist at Harvard University and somebody who's writing her own book about science and how it's conducted. And a very big thinker, so we're very happy to have her. So, before I get started, I want to just say, the reason I'm holding this is that in addition to the comments and questions we want you to make by standing up and saying your name when someone hands you the mic, and we will be happy to do that, you're also welcome to tweet in questions, at least during the sessions that we announced that for, and I think we're going to do it for a lot of them. And so the way to do that is to put @TCMYQA at the beginning of your tweet, @TCMYQA. Oh, we got it up there, thank you. And you can start doing that as soon as the session begins. I'll be looking at that on this little thing here, but we do want to hear from you in person if you feel like it. So we've tried to define techonomy briefly before on stage. And I guess rather than say any more introductory remarks, I don't think it's necessary. Peter and Brent did an excellent job of that. But Kevin, you know, you are what we consider a techonomist par excellence, and your book really does articulate some of these ideas. When you think about what we're trying to do and you hear what we're saying about it, does it make sense to you?
Absolutely. I think the kind of thought that sort of slowly dawned on lots of us is that technology is really the most powerful force in the world. I mean, there's nothing else. If it's, whenever you trace something happening in the world, you can usually trace it back to some new technology that has been introduced. And I use a very broad definition of technology, just as you do. For me, it's very close to almost being culture, but there's a difference between culture and technology. I think we tend to think of technology as hard stuff, wires, gadgets, lasers and things. But of course, law can be technology. A novel can be technology. And so that goes into the realm of culture. But the difference between culture and technology, as we normally understand it, is that technology in the technium, as I define it, entails this idea that all the things that we're making are so interdependent, so woven together, so vast that they form an emergent behavior, an emergent thing itself that is more than just a passive culture. It's actually dynamic. It actually responds. It has its own emergent behaviors. It has its own tendencies. It has, in a certain sense, its own agency.
But that doesn't mean it's inexorable and we can just sit back and wait for it to happen, right?
Not at all, because what's happening is that we're still involved because we are ourselves technology. We have invented ourselves. Technology is anything that comes from our mind. The first animal that we domesticated was humanity, humans. We've made ourselves. And so we're still making ourselves. We're still inventing ourselves. We're not done yet. We have physically changed our bodies through agriculture. We have an extended stomach called cooking, and that has changed our teeth and jaws. Our genes are now changing 100 times faster than they were 10,000 years ago. So we are still in the process of remaking ourselves. So we are both masters of technology, and we are also the children of technology, both at the same time. And we will never, ever escape from that tension between being the subject and the object of our inventions. And so we still have agency, but we have to recognize that this thing that we have made also has agency. And so my question that I've been asking is, well, if it has agency, what does it want?
Thank you, that's interesting. So to go from that very macro view to a more pragmatic way of looking at this, in terms of technology changing us, this is something inside Citi. in a big company, you are concretely attempting to change the entire enterprise through a different way of thinking about technology. Just quickly talk about how you think about that and what you're doing at Citi, Debbie.
Absolutely. I think as we really, when Vikram Pandit came in to be CEO at the beginning of the financial crisis, and he was looking around, he said, I better have some people thinking about the future. And really, we went to work a couple of years ago trying to create a much more human connection to both our clients and our customers, really trying to understand how they want to live their lives and how we can empower that. So it's a very, very different way of thinking about pushing product out the door. It's much more bringing them inside and understanding how we have to create a very different interaction with these individuals. And it was Brent mentioned about much less vertical. This is what we talk about a lot. It's flipping that on its side, that the future is really about the horizontal. It's about partnerships and collaboration, and this is how we do our work. So it's a very exciting way to change the way we bring capabilities to our customers, our clients, cities, which we think are a really important part of all this, because we see the world becoming so urban. And in fact, instead of being a set of countries, a connection of connecting dots between cities. And that is really kind of front and center of how we're thinking about really creating a different interaction.
We're going to hear a lot more about that cities thing over the next couple of days, but can you be concrete about one or two things you've done at Citi as a result of this mindset?
Absolutely. We really started a few years ago changing the approach to transit and started out kind of as a little idea, putting a chip on a card and letting people get into a transit system in Singapore, and then grew into a very cool, different way of saying, well, millions of people on their way every day go through subway stations. What if we created an opportunity for them to engage with us on their way instead of making them come to us? So we created a very high-tech, high-touch environment for them where they could get things done on their way to work, which then grew to a very exciting project that is our first example, I think, of what I call systems design, where we fundamentally redid the entire consumer banking approach in Japan and totally took out paper, took 150 processes, netted it to 12, and created a very, very different way for our customers to come into their neighborhoods and have an engagement. And it's been very exciting to see the reaction.
That's great. So Eric, we at Techonomy, me personally, think of Google as probably the ultimately techonomic company. Moving quickly, absolutely a believer in the power of technology to make the world a better place and to solve our problems. So when you hear this Techonomy idea of ours, does that make sense to you?
It does, and I'll put it in the context of my daily life, which is I spend most of my time assuming that the world is not ready for the technology revolution that will be happening to them relatively soon. One, because people don't understand what's going to happen, and second, because of the compounding that's occurring. There were 5 exabytes of information created by the entire world between the dawn of civilization in 2003. Now that same amount is created every 2 days. No wonder we're sort of overloaded. We can now...
Wait, every 2 days we create as much as we created up till 2003?
That is correct. And by the way, the growth rate, of course, is accelerating. It's probably faster this month. I'll give you another example. With online, with these sorts of devices...
Is that because of all those trucks you're driving around taking our Wi-Fi?
But the real issue is user-generated content. People are describing enormous amounts of things about themselves, in video and photographs and so forth. So you take this sort of device, right, and with products like Google Latitude, you can tell us where you are, and then you can tell your friends where you are. Well, we can, using AI techniques, predict where you're going to go. Pretty interesting. Good idea, bad idea. We can take a picture, and if you have 14 pictures on the internet within a 95% confidence interval, we can predict who you are. Now, you say you don't have 14 pictures? You have Facebook pictures, so there. Right? So all of a sudden, a lot of assumptions that we make about daily life are going away.
And that kind of could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what we do with that data, obviously.
Well, the first place, the technology, of course, is neutral, but society is not fundamentally ready for the questions that are going to be asked by the explosion of user-powered technology of one kind or another. And I think it's time for people to get ready for it.
And now that's going right to the main question we ask here. Can the world be turned in a more techonomic direction, which would be really about, will we be able to move forward? Will enough people understand what can be done? And will they do it in the most productive way, given the scope of our problems? I mean, you spend a lot of time talking to heads of state, CEOs of all kinds of companies, and government leaders all over the place. Do you feel like there is an understanding of the centrality that technology is playing in modern life?
It's completely predictable by the age of the person you're talking to. So the people who are quite old acknowledge it, but ask their secretary to read their email to them. People who are in my generation can read their email, but they don't understand quite what instant messaging and Twitter is. And folks of the generation below that sort of get it. I don't think there is a consensus, though, at societal level of how we're going to deal with this. My proposal, for example, is that, like other society things in life, it'll be possible at the age of 21 just to change your name, because all that recorded history of you as a teenager, you can just deny it. You know, that's not me. I didn't look it. I don't look like that anymore. I wasn't there. I'm not guilty. I mean, these are fundamental societal issues we have to face.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can
good.
drill down.
Raise your hand if you were a well-behaved teenager,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Come on, tell the truth.
Well,
I was in the 60s.
but I mean, I guess just one more Google question, because I mean, Google really does have this sort of core belief about the power of data to make the world a better place. So even though some people question certain things you do, clearly you've made our lives hugely more efficient, everyone in this room, without any question, and everyone who might be listening to anything coming out of this room. You're probably the most centrally used technology service. But I guess I just want you to go a little bit further down this path of, you know, can the world be turned into tech? I mean, are you fundamentally optimistic about how we are going to be able to incorporate technology in the broadest possible sense in the ways that Kevin talks about it to deal with global climate change and these issues?
I do,
that we're...
and partly it's because there's things that we can do now that we couldn't do before. You can, in fact, measure where people are and where things are down to the inch. You can actually know the answer to questions of, did everyone actually get this service or use it? And much of government and much of politics has been around estimates. Well, now we can actually know. We can actually track the spread of disease. We can actually predict outcomes and so forth. And overall, that will make the world a better place. And I think if you go back to Kevin's argument, you are in fact seeing that as a result, the collective intelligence, he has a more elegant way of articulating it, does in fact move society quite a bit forward.
Okay. Lisa, I mean, a lot of people say, what's a theoretical physicist doing on this panel? I think you even wondered that. And thank you for indulging us anyway. But now, when you hear what we're saying up here, as a really serious scientist, how does it relate to what you do in your mind?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's clear that technology has had a huge impact. And I think the sort of scale and pace of change is enormous and impressive. But even the word centrality of technology gets at the fact that technology is neither the beginning nor the end, in the sense that what are the questions we want to do, and what are the big seed changes that enter into technology that then exponentiate, and what are the incentives we have to do the right thing? It's really easy to get distracted by gadgets because people like them, it's profitable, and how do you keep going forward with the really big issues? And I think, you know, Kevin said that I think technology is the most powerful force, but then I think in that case physics should be interpreted as sort of the creator of the most powerful force, because it was really interesting preparing this to realize that, first of all, all of electronics is based on transistor technology now, which came out of understanding quantum mechanics. I mean, quantum mechanics, I mean, nothing could have seemed further from having applications. It was really a very basic understanding of what's going on at an atomic scale. And seriously, people that were looking at that, they did not think about having applications in mind. They were really doing pure science. And in fact, against their will, they were forced into these premises. They had no applications in mind. The World Wide Web came about, and one could argue it would have come about in other ways, and it probably would have. But the fact is, it came about from a bunch of particle physicists at CERN, where the Large Hadron Collider now happens, where protons collide. But it was because scientists were working together internationally and needed a format, a platform, where they could all work together on the same experiment, even though they were in different places. And, you know, and it goes on and on. If you think about electronics, I mean, just the discovery of the electron, who really thought that would be useful? Even back then. And it's hard to get back into that mindset because we so integrate it into the way we do things, and it happens so quickly. I mean, electricity, it's changed the face of the planet. All of these basic discoveries were not done with an eye to technology in mind, yet that's really where we all are. And so I think it's very easy to lose track of that and sort of the speed and excitement of technology to remember that there's all these basic science issues that we need room for, we need time for them. And so in some ways, I would argue that the boundaries are good, that we should have this different time scale and this different investment that we have in sort of long term. But then at the end of the day, we really want the incentive structure to be such that we all can really move towards the goals, that there's a real way that we're all going to do that.
Well, how are we doing? Are we putting enough resources into the fundamental science to ultimately get the technology out later? Not that it should be thought of so cause and effect, but obviously you're saying we need to take this fundamental research endeavor seriously. Are we?
I mean, it's certainly true that we're financing science, but I think we really have seen a trend towards trying to be more applied. And that's not bad. A lot of the applications are good, but if you think about it, a lot of the major breakthroughs have not happened that way. I mean, we've been working on trying to solve the problem of cancer for a long time. And we've made progress, but it's really been incremental because, and in some sense you might argue that some of it's too directed. It's very hard to just say, let's go and research this wild, crazy idea. It's much easier to get funding for things that you can point to where it's going to end up. But that's not where the big changes come from a lot of the time, I would argue.
Yeah, go.
I very rarely disagree with Eric, but he said something that I think I want to clarify because
I disagree with him a lot.
It fits into what you're trying to say, which is he said that technology is neutral. I actually have concluded that it's really not. It's absolutely positive. And it's positive in this way. It may take a minute, but here's how it goes, is that what technology expands when you deduct all the negative things that any technology, all the new problems that any technology would create, is that what it expands is choices and possibilities. And that even if it as a technology that we reject, the very fact that we have a choice about that is itself a good. And so you have, so the increasing choices, even if there are choices that we can decide we want to do human cloning or not, we suddenly have that choice, and that choice alone is good. And so that puts, even if it was a 50-50 chance, well, we're creating or destroying 50% of what we, a year. We have, on this hand, it kind of weighs out the fact that we even have something to weigh, the fact that we even have a choice. That is a positive, which pushes it over to say that overall technology is a positive force in the world because what it brings us constantly, relentlessly, is more choices, more opportunities, more possibilities. And that is good in itself. And I think I want to try and suggest that we shouldn't just tolerate progress. We shouldn't just tolerate technological advance. We should actually try and make it happen and accelerate it. That what we get from it is so good that we should do more of it. And what we get from it is usually these possibilities and these chances for people to have their full expression, to have the way in which they can find their dream, to do the thing that they're made for in terms of their suite of talents. But to do that, we need technology.
Well, what kind of grade would you give the world on how they're doing on that right now?
I think we get 51%. I think that all we need is 1% better than 50, 1% better positive than negative to win. I mean,
and are you comfortable we're at that place now?
Yeah. I mean, 50% of the world could be craft. 49%, let's say.
Can I respond to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting because, I mean, we've really discussed technology, but we haven't discussed economics, really. And I think part of the answer to this question lies in sort of the economic models, which are, they're not really based on on the pace of change that happens with technology. And so I think we think very much in terms of short-term policies, but here the impact can be so giant, and we don't necessarily take risks into account when we anticipate what's going to happen. So we end up with these disasters today that could have been anticipated and could have been prevented if we had thought about the pace of change and built that into the economic model, like what the net cost of things would be.
At the corporate level, do you think of it that way, Debbie, at all? Like that maybe you're building in more risk management mechanisms by becoming more techonomic?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the core of what we're focused on. We see data as one of our most critical areas of focus. And some of the things Eric was talking about, we're deploying. We're really see everything going into a mobile kind of format, and the opportunity for an individual to totally customize their relationship with their money is real. It exists. It's going to happen. And it's because of technology. It's because of location-based services. It's being able to know where you are, offer you a special offer because you're a great customer, being able to tell you where your nearest bookstore is. That's all doable, and people are going to be able to make payments just tapping their phone. All this technology exists. It's now coming together. And I think you're going to see a lot of these things happening where people can really say, this is how I want it to work, not how you're going to tell me how it works. And that's the opportunity.
When we were talking to prepare for this, I guess yesterday, you were saying that the big picture way of describing what you're doing is trying to figure out what is the future of money.
Right.
Right? Is that
Absolutely. I think
that's what a company has to do.
Absolutely. A core part of what we focus on is what we call responsible finance. So one of the things we're really looking at is everything we do has to have a positive impact to society. It's a very different approach than where we've been in financial services. It's really making financial services human and really having a personal connection with individuals or with corporations to create a very, very different dynamic to drive these changes and to create these kind of capabilities of funding some of the things that have to happen for, like in our cities and so forth. So that kind of change is really smarter money. Helping people make better decisions is really core to a lot of the things we're focusing on.
Yeah, this issue of companies needing to be good happens to be a particular passion of Mark Zuckerberg. I forget whether I put that in the book or not, but it's related to a question. Doc Searles has got some very good questions, more than one, but one is for Eric, which is very pertinent to what Debbie just said. The question is, who is the we that can know to the nth so much stuff? Is it only Google and the government? How about any of us? I mean, that's an interesting question. What do you think about that?
I'm not so happy about the Google and the government.
Right here. Yeah.
Let me just speak.
You don't see them as
You got
the
his
same?
attention on that one.
Let me just speak on the Google side. The fact of the matter is that the devices that we all use, the searches, the information that we do, is generating an enormous amount of information about us. And my guess is a lot of that will end up getting regulated over time because there will be abuses, hopefully not by Google. But the fact of the matter is that information can be used for many, many things, for good and bad things. And I think people will find it's very useful to have devices that actually remember what you were supposed to do because you forgot. And a reasonable model is that 10 years from now, computers will do what computers are really good at, which is doing deep analysis, remembering things exactly accurately, and so forth. And humans, will do what humans are very good at, which is intuition and feelings and so forth and so on. And that separation of power is a reasonable one. And the fact of the matter is I don't think we're quite ready for in terms of the data, for the application of modern AI technology on top of it.
A real life question. Identify yourself.
I'm Eric Brynjolfsson at MIT, and I know that Kevin and Eric were hesitant to disagree with each other, and hesitant to disagree with both of them. They're two of the smartest people in the world, if not necessarily on that panel up there right now. But when you say that technology is obviously neutral or that it's positive, I mean, it seems that there are a lot of counterexamples that there are technologies that are overwhelmingly, recently the sequence for the 1918 flu virus was published. It's hard for me to see how that's a net positive. There are lots of destructive technologies that are available. Or when we look at developing new types of digital money, some of them could trace people, or some would have complete anonymity. It's not obvious to me which one of those is even better or worse, but I doubt that they're both exactly equally good for society. I don't think it's you can just abdicate the idea that we don't have to worry about what technologies do. It seems that you do have to think about whether they're going to be used for good.
In the laundry list of possible bad things, I want to add one from Les Brun.
Can I actually respond?
Yeah, this will good. You can respond. Yeah, this one also you can respond to. Do we run the risk of losing our individual identities in the face of the speed and rate of interconnectivity?
So when I said technology was neutral, I was referring to the device, not the point that Kevin made overwhelmingly, which I actually agree with. So you find that the two of us actually agree with. And the fact of the matter, I actually agree with you for the following examples. I can think of hundreds of pathological examples of the application of technology, of which you just cited a couple, which, if misused, could actually bring down the fall of all human beings relatively quickly. And we all understand that. And furthermore, there are, in fact, evil people in the world, and I know it's a shock. Right? So the fact of the matter is there are evil people, and they do actually have access to this, and society as a whole is going to have to figure out a way to prevent them from getting access to it, or at least using it. It'll have to be criminalized, it'll have to be killed, shot, whatever, to do this, because you can't kill all the people at once, right? So there's a question in our industry as to our own sort of moral liability for this sort of stuff. And I worry about this a lot. And the fact of the matter is that crimes are committed using cell phones. Crimes are committed using money, and the people who invented money, credit cards, and so forth and so on. So how do you define the line? And I think these are broader societal questions. So when I talk about technology, my overwhelming view is that on balance, technology is positive, and that the principles that we all take advantage of, which are openness and transparency, make sense. I would make a stronger point that the only way to manage this set of issues that we're facing is going to be by much greater transparency and no anonymity.
Right.
And the reason is that in a world of asymmetric threats, true anonymity is too dangerous. You'll have to have at least some ability. If you look at banking, for example, there's this know your customer law, and you're actually required to go and prove that you are a human being. One of the errors which is, I guess, easy if you show up as a human, one of the errors that the internet made a long time ago is that there was not an accurate and non-revocable identity management service. And the best example of an identity management service today that's reasonably reliable is Facebook, right? But you need a more generalized service or set of services, and people can actually say, I really am a human, and I really can be held account for whatever evil thing I'm about to do.
Do you think Facebook can be extensible to do even more based on that identity matrix?
Well, you of course, are much more of an expert on Facebook.
No, I'm not,
than I.
not than you.
But I'm sure it can, but I think it's reasonable to say that you need a name service for humans.
Right.
And that name service, it's just the information is too powerful, and it can be misused. And the governments are going to require it in some form. They just are going to. It's not going to be okay to have random terrorists doing random terrible things under the cover of absolute anonymity. By the way, this was never true. 200 years ago in a small town, you could not sneak around and people didn't know who you were.
Oh, this is one of my favorite points. Facebook recreates the small town in an era of urbanization, in a way, the visibility of the small town.
So that's the negative. There's actually another positive reason, which is that what we all want from technology is basically absolute customization, absolute personalization. We want other people and technology to treat us as individuals. Well, the only way you have absolute personalization is with absolute transparency.
Yeah.
So you can't have both. You can't have people treating me as an individual without knowing me as an individual. So I think you have to have, personalization comes along with transparency.
And then,
agree.
can I just add one more thing? Lisa, I think, said it right, which is that the fundamental modeling that everybody's doing in the technology industry does not anticipate what's really going on. The physicists have always understood this because they can actually do dynamic equations in their heads, and they understand these things as flows. So the one way to think about technology and what we're all talking about is you take the combination of power laws, right, plus optionality around choices and absolute scale, and then you get the chaotic nature of what we're all doing. And you can translate that in a mathematical way much better than I can.
Back there, identify yourself, please.
Josh Reynolds with Hill & Knowlton. My question is this: who is most threatened by turning toward a more techonomic direction, and why? If a revolution could be defined as movement against a resisting force, or an evolution is defined as adaptation to a resisting force, what's the resisting force here?
Good question.
I could venture an answer, but I'm not a panelist.
Well, let's start with autocratic governments that ban the use
Right.
of
Right.
That's the
powerful
answer.
information
It's those
to do
who hold
flash
the
mobs
power
against-
autocratically today.
Right. Let's start with the Tehran flash mobs and the use of Twitter. There are plenty of examples where self-organizing systems could lead to a social movement, and tanks trump the mobile phone every time.
For that matter, it also is companies that are run, in a autocratic fashion. The same in a company and a country is equally true.
But in fairness, there probably are also individuals who value privacy, and there's scientists and writers who have worked at a very different pace for years. And I don't know that it's not attacking them, but I think it's valuing less what they're contributing. And so it's not only bad people that would be pushing back. There's probably some good people that also are pushing back.
Do you think that, Kevin?
Well, I think in general, to my observation, that on average, that there's very little resistance to it. If you look at worldwide, what's happening worldwide is people are stampeding by the billions towards more technology. They're grabbing cell phones as fast as you can manufacture
That was
them.
what the World Economic Forum session was just about.
It's
to measure it, it's happening so fast.
It's happening so fast. So that while there may be pockets of people who would see themselves as loser, I think on average, most people in the world see themselves gaining by increasing the choices that technology gives them. And so they're running to it as fast as they can.
So the
Well,
follow-up
that's
then
what
is,
we saw in the I'm sorry, in the paper today. We're talking about how, looking at some of the facts coming out in the last quarter's spending, people are spending way more on technology and less in some of the goods that they used to buy, because this is driving this whole consumerization, and where we're seeing the lines between the consumer and business just blurring.
A lot of incumbencies are opposed to these things because technology tends to threaten the power and structure of incumbency.
We were talking about publishing. It's like, right now, this is the best time in the world to be a reader. Readers have never had it better. Now, publishers, that's a different story. And so I think so the people who are threatened are the people who have current business models that are working.
Exactly.
But the rest of everybody, if you like music, this is the best time in the world ever.
Well, people who have business models that are working that aren't changing rapidly.
Right.
Right. So here, even the problem, by the way, with all these Twitter questions, we have way more than we can deal with. But I do like real-world questions, Sue. We'll have some more Twitter ones. Go. Identify yourself.
Yeah, Jigar Shah. I run the Carbon War Room, and was a solar entrepreneur before that. I'm not exactly sure how to frame this, so I'll give you a little bit of a comment first. I think I use technology a lot for my job and what I do, and it's fantastic. But because I work on the infrastructure side, used to work for BP and then start a solar company, et cetera, that I see how much we have to do as an infrastructure side to support you, right? So today, 30% of all new electricity used in this country, it powers technology. New data centers, new iPhones, new whatever. That electricity comes from largely extractive industries, right? Those extractive industries have severe consequences on people, from water quality issues to other things around the world. Things from around population growth. I mean, and things that we do that are a zero-sum game. The oil industry spends somewhere on the order of $1 trillion a year to keep us running, right? New exploration, the whole 9 yards. If we wanted to actually power all of the 1.6 billion people around the world who don't have electricity, and therefore right now have limited access to a cell phone or a mobile device, that's a zero-sum game. I mean, there's only so much money that Citibank actually allocates to the power sector. And so they actually have to allocate that to a creditworthy counterparty like Google to do their data center, or to figure out, when you guys do microfinance, to help out these other folks. And I do think that it may not be a zero-sum game because of some sort of like theoretical bottleneck, but there are practical bottlenecks around where BP spends its money, or solar companies do, or whatever else, to meet all the infrastructure needs that the technology guys run rampant.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it. I think that by definition, the the economy is a non-zero-sum game. I mean, there's just billions of dollars more this year than there were 100 years ago, 5 years ago. It's growing. That's a zero-sum game. I mean, that's a non-zero sum. So the technology is non-zero sum. It has this multiple magic that it's able to self-generate more, to self-create, expand. That's the beauty of it. That is the fantastic aspect of this Techonomy.
Mark Anderson. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Let's keep it going. We got to cut just a few more minutes.
Mark Anderson, Strategic News Service. As you know, I'm a believer, so I'll just say that out front. And thank you, all of you, for putting this great show on. Thanks a lot. I'm really glad to be here.
You're one of our role models, so good.
Thank you. So I am a believer, and I do believe everything that Kevin said is true. I'm there. However,
there's always a however.
However, Lisa, I think, made a good point, which you guys haven't quite picked up on, and I'll add 2 more words. So economy is one word. We all work 90 hours a week, and the technology we're making helps us work 110. And I know it's true for you, and me, and so that's not necessarily wise. So there's a word. It doesn't make us happy necessarily. Happy. There's a lot of research on being happy. And so I'd like to ask a question, and one more word I'm going to throw up is beauty. Yeah. And I live in a very strange place.
Doesn't have to be a question. You can just make this a comment.
I opted for beauty where I live. So the point is, what about people who are opting today for health, or for a more constrained life, fewer gadgets, less technology, as a reaction to all the stuff that we're doing here? I do believe that we're doing the right thing, but there's an elephant in this room, which is there's a very strong cultural backlash right now.
Well, this is a form of answer to the guy back there about the loser.
I think we're all together on this. So any comments you guys would like to make about, isn't there a missing part of this conversation?
No, this is why God...
Where we achieve beauty, or we achieve...
Oh, we're going to hear something about God.
This is why God invented the off button.
Yes.
We're not hitting him.
Do you use it a lot? Eric?
Spouse.
Do you go and totally shut off
Yes,
sometimes?
I actually do.
For how,
because
how long can you go?
I can do it for at least 90 minutes.
That's not enough. Can you go
Look,
for
you know,
can
enough
you go
time for a dinner, you know?
Can you, okay, a dinner. What about 2 days? Can you do that?
No, but 90 minutes. Give me 90 minutes. Give me 90 minutes.
I have an answer.
We only got 2 minutes left, so real
Right.
quick.
Here's the thing. The thing is that if you want to do that, you have that choice, that possibility. There's the Amish who are doing this. You could go and live with the Amish. I could give you a $20 bus ride and you could be there, right? So why don't you do that? No, you can do it if you want. If you want to go back into the Stone Age, you can do that. You have that option. That's the beauty of it. All those options still exist. And so, there are people who are doing it. The Amish, actually, they optimize for leisure. They actually have more leisure than we have. That's what they're optimizing for. But they're not optimizing for choices. So if you want a society that optimizes for choices, this is it. This is what we're getting. And so you can still have that choice to minimize your choices. That's the beauty of it.
It's a little bit unfair. We could all like not eat junk food, but we do.
So back there, we have somebody. Stand up and identify yourself, please.
From Ghana. I think that the technology neutrality issue can be enhanced. The framing of it can be enhanced. It's not that what is at stake is whether technology has a net positive or negative effect, but whether it amplifies the trends towards positiveness and negativeness either way. So does technology amplify the positive trends or amplify the negative trends? And how you enhance that ratio?
But didn't you already answer that in the 51% point in a way? I mean,
Yeah. I think there's no doubt that there are pathological technologies. There's no doubt that we destroy a lot. But all we have to do is create 1% more than we destroy every year, compounded over centuries, and that's what we get, civilization.
Yes, but the issue is whether the concentration of power that is necessitated by technology, as opposed to the concentration of the diffusion of knowledge, and how you balance that ratio. Do we have the knowledge? Is technology helping us to get the knowledge to handle handle the power that is generating?
But there's something fundamental going on, which is that in our lifetimes, literally in our entire lifetimes, we'll go from a very small number of people having access to information and power to at least 5 billion people on the planet having pretty much access to all the world's knowledge in their local language. That is a remarkable achievement. It has an awful lot of implications, including the negative ones that we're talking about. But when you talk to somebody who has never been able to get to read a book, had no textbooks in college and whatever, and now you have a device strategy where they can actually literally compete in the knowledge world that we all take for granted here, that is a remarkable thing. We're talking about a couple billion people entering the connected world. And I'm very proud to be part of that. And I think that this conference is really a lot about the consequences of that.
and it's all about empowerment. I mean, to me, empowerment is the single biggest manifestation or ramification of all this stuff. Empowerment at the level of the individual, which Google is one of the ultimate progenitors of. We have to wrap up, but I wanted to say one thing. There's a good reason why, Kevin Kelly is not only up here now, he's actually going to be at the end too. We like the way he thinks so much, which you could probably see why, that he's going to be here at the close on Friday too. So sorry we don't have more time. Sorry for all the Twitter questioners who didn't get their questions answered. But now I want to turn it over to my colleague Brent, and thank you to the panel.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.